not to this computer. And I'm gonna turn on attentions. Okay. All right. Oh, okay, good. We get some more people joining us. So let me pull up the questions on my end. And we can get started. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our careers in STEM panel on chemistry. I was hoping that we'd have some clinical laboratory scientist representation, but we ended up not having anyone. So we're going to focus mainly on chemistry today. But if I can have, we're going to have the panelists go around and introduce themselves. I'll start, Raine, with you. If you can tell me your name. Sorry, I'm trying to get this up and running. Your name, your job title, how long you've been in your current position, and what degrees you currently hold or are working on.
All right, perfect. So hello everyone. My name's Raine. My job title, I have two job titles. I'm a senior tutor over at Mesa College, an embedded tutor and lead mentor tutor there, and then mainly tutor math and chemistry. And then how long I've been there, I think I'm going on to 5, almost 6 years now, because I tutored all throughout my undergrad. And from my undergrad, I started at Mesa, transferred over to UCSD, got my degree in environmental chemistry, and then currently waiting to hear back about grad school. So we're in limbo. And then my other job title, official job title is lead project development, I believe, at what is it called? At a company called Thinkist, where it's a teacher pipeline, sort of kind of for teenager, we could say teenagers, high school students who want to go down the path of becoming educational professionals.
Wonderful. And you have a degree in?
A degree in environmental chemistry, a BS.
Wonderful. And we're working on grad school. Awesome. All right, send it over to you, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Bottenberg. Right now, I'm a quality control scientist at Illumina, and I've been there for about 3 years in July. And then before that, I graduated in 2020 from UCSD with a BS in human biology. And then since it was the peak pandemic, the only jobs available were COVID testing. So I did that for a year. I touched like the real samples and did the PCR and was able to confirm, positive, negative results at that time. And then it was after that that I got into Illumina.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll just kind of do a rotating back and forth. So Elizabeth, I'll start with the second question with you. So what drew you to chemistry, or in this case, your particular degree? I think you're chemistry adjacent in QC, is that accurate?
Yep.
And then did you know what you wanted to do with your degree when you started to pursue it?
What really led me to the field, in high school, I was really interested in genetics, and the idea of personalized medicine. And so with my family history, I was really interested in pursuing a career that alleviated that or really tried to make personal impact. And I also discovered Illumina and their mission at the same time of improving human health by unlocking the power of the genome. And so it was really that continuous value that I had for myself that pushed me towards the biology and chemistry field. But when I graduated college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I kind of wanted to be in genetics. I did apply for the genetic counseling master's program, and I ended up not matching, but it worked out because I made it to Illumina. But as I'm going through the process still early in my career, I think I'm always going to have that question in the back of my mind of like, what do I want to do with this? How can I make more impact with the resources I have? So it's ever evolving.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's such an important message that I think students need to hear, is that there's not, we tend to think about the degree as being kind of the terminal point, right? Okay, now I'm done, right? And that's very, very infrequently people's experience of careers and what they want to do, even in education, right? So awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Raine?
So I think back in high school. So it's funny enough, I did really like chemistry in high school. And then my counselor said that's boring and wouldn't let me enroll in AP. Yeah, it wouldn't let me enroll in AP chemistry when I tried, and instead put me in a kinesiology class. And so I thought I was gonna, because I was good at it, and I thought I was gonna probably go down the route of nursing like the rest of my family. But then I changed my degree several times when I was at community college, and I just kept coming back to chemistry. And then I was a general chemistry major for the majority of my undergrad, and then one semester left at UCSD, I switched to environmental because I had taken an atmospheric chem class, I'd taken environmental chemistry, and what really like I guess like made me really love it was, hey, this isn't just in class academic work. This is like applicable outside of the classroom. And at the time too, I was also a tutor, and I was like, I really wanted to show my students, hey, it's not just what we do in the classroom, it applies outside too, and this is how. And I thought it was more relevant too, especially, hey, this is the world we live in, we should take care of it, right? And so that's why I switched over to environmental chemistry. What I want to do with it, initially when I was just a gen chem major, even though I was a tutor at the time, I thought I was just going to get into toxicology because I was like, hey, why not? Had no interest. Had no interest in toxicology, but I was like, eh. And then I went into an internship, and I come to find out I wasn't very big on research. It just didn't, it rubbed me the wrong way. So then I was like, but I really loved education, and I really loved changing like students' perspective of, well, because at community college I get a lot of students who are like, hey, I don't like chemistry, or have had a really bad experience with this. And it's like, okay, that's completely fine, that's valid, that's your experience. Let's try to like, what can I do to help change that perspective, or at least make it better and more digestible, right? And so I really want to go towards the realm of education, hence why I'm waiting to hear back from grad school so I can get that master's started. But
Yeah, I think they usually let you know in what, March or April. We're coming up.
we're coming up.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, in your community college time, did anyone tell you like, hey, maybe not nursing, hey, maybe something else, or was it just your decision to make the shift?
I want to say it was like a power struggle internally,
Okay,
because I had known that I could go down this route only because I was
right.
surrounded. I mean, my professors and whatnot. It's like, hey, this is the route that they took, but it was more so a power struggle because I was like, in the sense that this is kind of like what my fam did,
Right.
so it felt weird to go a different way completely. And no one in my family's in education. So I was
Mm.
like, okay, the only example that I had was really my mentors and like my professors, as well as my colleagues over at the community college. So that was the only example that I really had. And and also to hop off of that, I was the only one in my family to go into higher education. So I was a first generation student too. So I had to navigate that all on my own. It was very stressful, but yeah, with like, essentially the people around me, I was able to do that. And so I had to kind of find those resources to help me move towards like a degree that I really like felt connected to. And I'm a big believer in, what is it called? Like, if you like to do something, you enjoy doing something, maybe try to have it down as like a career. That way it doesn't feel so monotonous
Mhm.
every day you clock into work, right? But yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's great advice. I love that so many people that I know, I don't know if this is true of your experience, Elizabeth, but I never had anybody in my family that was like science oriented. So I like didn't have people to draw on for how to do what I wanted to do.
Same, especially like if you're, I think a lot of families, when they think of science, they think, oh, doctor,
Right.
physician assistant, like you're going to be in the hospital. I thought, no, mom, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so and then so you know what you don't want to do with it, but maybe you don't know what you do want to do with it. So I think that's where, having these kinds of conversations is super helpful for students to see like it's okay if you don't know where you're going to go with this, even though your family may be like, "Oh, you need to tell like if you're going to do something for school, you need to know what you're going to do with it, right?" So no, I think that's really nice for students to hear. Okay, so Raine, I think we might have covered a little bit of this, but let's get into your current field, which you
Mm.
kind of already talked about, and then what kind of resources helped you move from your degree to your career?
Let's see. So current field right now, I'm in essentially the realm of education. What resources helped me move from degree to career? Honestly, the connections that I have within over at Mesa Community College. For example, the job that I have right now at like our at the company that I work with, my boss was like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And so I was like, "Oh, cool, I'll try." And what was nice is he waited for me to graduate. So because I was at the end of my semester, so he waited for me to graduate, and then as soon as I graduated, I was offered the position. So I definitely would like to say like I was lucky in that sense because I do have friends who graduated, and they're still looking for jobs. So I'm definitely lucky in that sense there. And so really like connections with the people that you already know was what really helps me. But yeah.
Awesome. Elizabeth, did you want to piggyback off that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think after I left the COVID lab, truly the only way I got into biotech in general was through connections or knowing other people. And I think it's really ironic because all the romantic partners I've had in the past, usually those have been the gateway to my next job because, they'll have a friend and I'm like, oh my gosh, you work where I want to be. And even if those like partners don't work out, at least I like got a job, out of that breakup or whatever. Um, but yeah, it was truly through knowing other people. And then if you're able to model your skills after them, it will help you really get the leg up into the next position you want. Um, but I mean, it also just takes a lot of grit and a lot of perseverance.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think perseverance is a big one for everyone. I wanted to mention something Rainey said that research didn't quite fit you. So I was hoping to have Lindsay on because I was hoping to have some representation from people who are in research. But I didn't manage that. So we are maybe I won't speak for you, Elizabeth, but I am definitely um I love and appreciate research, but it didn't quite fit my personality. So I just wanted to bring that up that it's important not just to see what kind of sparks your interest about a particular topic or field, but also to see what fits you, right? So everybody has their own personality and things that they gravitate towards. Um, and I'm sure that there's probably research that I could find that I could engage with deeply, but it's a big quest and it's a big ask, right? And um I'm always not envious is the wrong word, but I'm always amazed that people are able to find those topics in the limited space that we usually have, especially as a transfer student, you have even less exposure to that stuff. But yeah, so sometimes things just don't fit, and that's okay, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't try it, right? And so that's why I think one of the other big resources that people draw on is internships, right? So if you can find a way to explore those things hands-on, whatever those things are, that's a really good way of starting to figure out, at the very least, what you don't want to do, which isn't necessarily confirmative, right? It's not telling you, oh, I do want to do this, but it definitely helps shape your path, right? And again, even with an internship in an area that doesn't really fit you, you'll still be meeting those people that are networked into other areas that they might be able to send you in directions that you would have never thought of to go yourself, right? So so I just wanted to throw in a little research representation there that, trying things on is really the best way to see if they fit. And it's fine if they don't. But you'll still benefit from those experiences. They're never a waste of time. So yeah, did either of you want to comment on or add to that at all?
I can add to it. So when I didn't know that I didn't like research until I did my internship. And the funny part is, prior to that, I was like, I'm gonna get into toxicology, and it was a lot of what they were doing that would be in that field, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience, but like you said, I wouldn't have known that if I never tried. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I really enjoy working with people. So there's, and obviously anything that you're working in research or otherwise, there's always a lot of people interfacing. Sometimes there's not, but I really enjoyed that aspect of work. I bartended and waited tables for a really long time, so that was just kind of hardwired into me. So yeah, so you can start to see that there are other ways that maybe might fulfill those other parts of yourself. So all right. Oh, we're moving too fast. We're so good at this. Okay, so Elizabeth, if you would mind describing a typical work day in your field.
For sure. So, as a quality control scientist, it's my job to make sure that before Illumina sends out product, I need to make sure it's good product and that it works and it represents the standards that we have for our product. And so, usually for me, so I have a pretty different work schedule. I do 4 10s. So I work 4 days a week, about 10 hours a day. And I'm in the lab about 6 to 8 hours a day, usually moving through different library prep workflows within the lab. So it's a lot of pipetting, a lot of extracting DNA and getting it ready to be sequenced, and then using our sequencers to check and make sure that whatever item we're selling truly works. And then if I'm not in the lab, even though lab is a very individual activity, we're based on teams, and the teams need to work together, especially if, say, we're testing and something's not working. We'll have to work together to do an investigation. And so even though I'm not directly in research, a lot of my job is doing that investigation, doing the research behind why maybe something's not working, and then moving forward to remedy the product.
Hey, look, it's Lindsay. Yay, welcome. You're muted, but I still can't hear you, even though you're unmuted. No problem. Yeah. You got a Bluetooth hanging around somewhere, huh?
How about now?
Yay, you're here.
All right. Yeah, I apologize. I'm sorry.
No worries.
in a meeting and my boss literally was sitting in a chair with wheels on it, blocking the door.
Ooh,
So
nice. Okay.
I
Okay.
basically couldn't out.
No worries. It's all good. So just quick disclaimer, we are recording and we are looking at our questions. If I'm going to kind of run you quickly through the first three. So if you want to introduce yourself, tell us your job title, how long you've been there, and then what degree or degrees you currently hold.
Okay, hi. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Cameron. I am a research scientist at Leidos. Leidos is a Fortune 250 defense contractor. So very large national defense contractor. I have a PhD in chemistry that I received or earned from UC Irvine. My background is in organic and inorganic synthetic chemistry. And did I answer all I could just keep going if you wanted me to.
No, that was great. That was great. And then, so next question gets us into what drew you to chemistry? And did you know what you wanted to do with your degree when you started to pursue it?
So what drew me to chemistry? So I actually have a fine art undergrad degree, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Kentucky. I have a fine art undergrad. My focus was photography, and
Wow.
graduated in 23, 24. I can't totally remember. Never took a chemistry class in my life. I actually went back to school, and at 27, I thought I wanted to be I was trying to do pre-med, and I ended up obviously taking chemistry, and it was organic chemistry that just blew my mind, and I loved it. I was like, this is awesome. And I loved it because when I sat down, everybody was taking the class most people were taking the class for the first time. And like, it didn't matter what their background was or how much math they had or like physics or whatever. Everybody was equally as scared, And so that was really the playing field was very level. And that was like a really, something that I thought was really, it was a very positive experience. When I graduated from UCI, I had no idea what I wanted to do. No clue. So my path to get to Leidos was a little bit like everything else in my life, not very conventional. And, but yeah, no, I love my job now. I get to work on so many different cool things. And we say defense, but I just need to be very clear. It really is defense. Like there's a difference between defense and offense, right? For the government, right? My group, we try to keep people safe is what we try to do. So just to throw that out there.
I love that. That's a really nice distinction to make because I think the umbrella is big. So
it is. I mean,
yeah.
in the defense industry, there are other things, right? But that's offensive, and we don't really work in that realm. So
I like that because it's nice to know that there are places in defense that are that you can have moral investment in.
yes.
I don't know if that maybe is an oversimplification, but I don't know. I can see how there would be some companies to work for that might be difficult to
Yeah.
mesh
If you
with.
have, absolutely. And it all depends on what contract you're working on, right? What the government, but the great thing about my job is you definitely get to pick and choose what really, you can actually really follow your passion. So I'm working a lot on, alternative energy, renewables, that kind of thing. So
For a defense company, that's fantastic. That's really, really interesting.
we're the #1 user of fossil fuels in the world.
Yeah.
Which is
the Defense Department or the United States in general?
The United States military is the single largest consumer of fossil fuels in the world.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Mostly in the form of jet fuel. So when you see, those planes flying over Petco Park when you're watching your Padres game, that's pretty expensive. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Okay. So then, to get us almost caught up here, how did you learn about your current field, and what were some of the resources that helped you move from your degree to career?
Networking, networking, networking. Very few people, if probably mostly no one. I don't know, maybe somebody on this panel but it's very hard to get a job just applying through a LinkedIn job posting. It's very difficult. Most of the time, it's all about networking. And so it started off as like a social, just like a colleague that I work with now. He's actually retiring, but I knew him socially. And I don't want to go into it too far, but it was all about networking.
Yeah, I think that was very much what we echoed as well, was the people that you meet along the way, even people that might not have been a part of your degree path at all, just valuing the people that are in your life, and being open to what they can help you achieve, essentially.
Yeah, provide. Yeah, connection. Absolutely. 100% agree.
Awesome. All right. And I think Elizabeth, just to round back to question number 4, we were talking about a typical work day. Did we get through that? Do you feel like you got a chance to? Okay, perfect. Wonderful. All right. So then, Raine, did you want to tell us about a typical work day in your field?
Yeah. Okay. So you can hear me, right? I just want to make sure. Okay, cool. So since I'm at 2 places right now, at my other company, it's remote. So I essentially wake up, log in, and one thing I'm practicing is like what is it called? Like meditation minutes before I jump into everything that needs to be done that day. But typical work day, I'm doing right now a lot of like class prep, as well as what can I do to engage students more within the class, as well as what is it called? Letting them know, hey, while we may be teaching you this too, this is also like for your students, right? So how would you interact with them? And such, and how to increase that engagement within class right now as our semester is starting. And because it's remote, something we challenge is, essentially, engagement, like camera use. I always tell them, hey, it's weird to talk to a void. That's why we talk to each other in cameras, and it's easier for me to interact with them because I'm not just looking at myself, I'm looking at their smiling faces, getting that back channel acknowledgement when, hey, do you guys understand this, right? Because I'm not teaching myself, I'm trying to teach you guys, right? And the best way I can do that is, from acknowledgement from them. Now, when I'm at Mesa, typical work day, I run into the writing center first, and essentially kind of have like a moment to myself, and then I go to Danica's office. And if anything important needs to be, I guess, discussed beforehand, and then we go to class, help out in class from there, and then right after class, I have I call it personalized tutoring, because since these students are coming from her class specifically, I know how she taught the material. That way I can cater to them more, in the sense that, hey, you've learned it this way, so let's continue learning it that way, so that we don't confuse you if some of them may be confused, right? But yeah, so that's a typical work day for me on both ends. But yeah.
Okay, so that's a nice contrast too. So you have some asynchronous work, which obviously has its ups and downs, right? It's nice to be able to work from home. But I think you mentioned early on that there can be some challenges in terms of separating your work life from your home life, and kind of making sure that you are diligent in outlining those spaces, even if they aren't physically distinct.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned that because thankfully I have two separate computers. I have one computer that I only do work on, and then one that's my personal computer. And as soon as I'm done with work, the best thing for me to do, or else I'm gonna keep staying on this computer, I literally put it in a drawer and then I close it, and so that way I don't have to look at it. It doesn't have to bother me. And if I just happen to leave it turned on, the noises won't bother me so much as I'm hearing like notifications from it because it's in a drawer. It's done. Whatever I didn't finish the day or that day, I can do it the next day. The world's not going to end. But that is also, it's easier said than done, right? So something I'm definitely working on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raine. All right, Lindsay, do you want to tell us about a typical workday in your field?
Sorry, I'm used to Teams, so we use Teams a lot. Anyway, so a typical workday, I feel very fortunate because I have a hybrid structure to my workday. So I can, if I need to work from home, so I tend to get more things like administrative, or if I need to sit down and write, just focus on something, I get more work accomplished at home. So, I don't have anybody standing over me being like, why aren't you here? Right. I love my office. It's great. But like, I also work from home often. I will come into the office if I need to. Sometimes if I'm working on a particular program that requires me to work in the lab, I'll have that set up and I'll be working in the lab. Or I come in for meetings. So really it's just whatever the job requires. I do a lot of traveling as well. So to DC specifically, because we work on a lot of DARPA. I don't know if anybody's familiar with DARPA it's like Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. So that's DARPA gave us like the internet and stealth and GPS and all these other things. So if I need to travel to DC to meet with a DARPA program manager, that happens a lot too. So really it's just on a daily, like a day by day basis. It all depends, right? But office, home, and some travel peppered in there. So.
Wonderful. I think it's really nice for our students to hear how diverse a day can be in different jobs, especially because being a student tends to be kind of monolithic, right? You're very much like, this is what I do as a student. And so I think, and I think that can be true of a lot of jobs or careers that people have in other areas too, right? So I know working in a restaurant or working in a bank, right? There's not a lot of variation that can happen there, but there are, especially in STEM degrees, I find that there's a lot of variation in terms of what people's day-to-day is like. And that can be really exciting, right? There's a lot of creativity as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like whatever you need to do, however you learn, however you work best, right? Whatever you need to do to get the job done. Right.
Yeah.
And I love being able to have the freedom to make that decision for myself. Right.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. That's really nice. Did anyone want to add anything to that? Feeling good. All right, cool. I don't remember who we were starting with before, but Lindsay, I'm gonna let you take this one. So what kind of opportunities for growth are there in your fields?
So research scientists can take actually several different pathways within Leidos. So there's a thing called, you can be a PI, you can actually lead a program. So a principal investigator of a program. So for example, I'm not the PI of this program, but I am working on it's a $25 million IARPA program, which is the intelligence community's version of DARPA. And it's not classified. I have security clearances and all that stuff too. So my job requires that. so this is an unclassified program, and with what I do for that program is I am actually a technical lead, but we have principal investigators. For my technical lead role, I interface a lot with UCSD. We work with 3 labs at UCSD, so I'm going to group meetings even, right? I don't have to, but I like it because, I'm a scientist. So, but my focus is the battery. So I work with Professor Joe Wang from UCSD and another postdoc of his, and I present their work at customer meetings. So there's a role between, my role is a mixture of, customer relations, managing subcontractors, and then also developing technical solutions, right? But from obviously a chemistry standpoint. We also, so a nice path forward from just a technical lead, like I said, would be a PI. You could also do this, you also can do this thing called, it's not a capture manager, but it's basically you interface with DARPA program managers and you try to give them ideas for big programs, right? So you, instead of working on big programs, you just create them and then kind of sell them to the government, in a certain way. So that's actually what I'm super interested in, because I love working on programs. Sometimes you're kind of bogged down to working on one thing all the time. And instead you can jump around, right? And if there's something that you find particularly super interesting, you can, hey, I can come up with a program or a research plan to really push this into commercialization or whatnot. So that's another area that you can go into. And then you can obviously do management, type roles where you're managing other teams of other scientists within your group.
Okay. Would you say that I forget what the title was that you mentioned, but would you say that that's the equivalent of sales in your company, kind of interfacing and bringing up with creative ideas to?
Yes, it definitely has a large selling aspect, but you have to have a very strong technical background, right? You've got to be able, it's honestly not that much different than a PI at a university writing a proposal to get funding.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. Because a lot of times what we do is we go after government contracts. So they will release we call it, it's a BAA, a broad agency announcement. They'll say, hey, the government really wants to solve this problem with CO2 capture. Right. So you can do one of two things. You can answer that call and say, I have an idea and let's try this out. I have a team of subcontractors and let's go after it. Or you can do it from the other side where you engage with the government program manager and you say, hey, this is a really good idea. You should create a program out of this. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah.
you do have to sell it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you gotta know what you're talking about. So yeah, it's a lot of sales, I guess. Even though I've never really done sales, so I don't really know.
That's fine. And I didn't mean to imply that it was. I was just working off of, a lot of companies have, multifaceted areas where, you may start off in a company doing one job. And then, as time goes on, even if it's not necessarily growth, in a monetary sense or in a titled way, there are ways to grow into different positions, I guess. So lateral growth.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of curious because, some companies have that aspect, but
sure.
Yeah.
No, and that's totally correct. And from a scientist perspective too, there are some scientists that are really good with people and some scientists that are just better off working in the lab with a small team. So yeah, the scientists that are better with interfacing with, the customer or the client, right? They tend to take that path more, right? And aren't in the lab as much.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Elizabeth, did you want to tell us about some opportunities for growth in your fields?
Absolutely. I learned this while I was in the role, but quality control is truly the baseline for a lot of companies, where you learn all of the inner workings of the company, you learn all of the process and protocols, you have the good lab practice and documentation practices down to a T. So you really have a jack of all trades skill set if you ever want to leave QC. So you could easily go into research if you think, wow, like whatever I'm doing in the lab is awesome and I want to learn more about it and start projects on it. You could easily go into sales now that you have that technical expertise. If you have this people friendship making way of you, you can easily go into sales and say, hey, I know this technical area is really complicated, but I'm going to break it down for you and I'm going to sell all this product and make the company a bunch of money. Um, and you could easily, of course, go into management. So once you're in QC and you have that technical base, you can go anywhere else in the company. And it's also advantageous if you want to move to another company. You can say, hey, I know about this kind of technology, and I can use that and make your company better.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Raine, did you want to follow up on that?
So not gonna lie, part of me was like scared of this question.
I know that's fair. I get that.
I was like, oh, because then I personally feel that I'm kind of at a crossroads right now. Because the company that I work at, it's called Thinkist. It's a startup, right? And so it's like, it could go one way or another. That's just the nature of a startup, honestly. And so, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out all that my role can do, to be
Sure.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the time I'm kind of creating work for myself, but how I kind of envision my role is, since I do a lot of like the background stuff, is, hey, how can I just make this more enjoyable for the students who sign up for it,
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. Um and I guess like the beauty of that is, interestingly enough, I'm like, oh, I don't really like research all that much, but kind of researching ways to really get like these students who are in the program, like, hey, how can I make this better for you? How can I make this experience better for you? But then also I apologize for the dog in the back.
That's okay.
But then also I'm like learning more about like the realm of education, like, essentially, hey, one day I would love to have a class of my own at a community college, right? And so starting to learn what that may look like, not just in the remote space, but then how to engage people in real life, and then want them to like want to essentially come back, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I find that when people really enjoy something, they want to do it, or they want to do it more, at least. But yeah, this is a question I'm definitely still figuring out on my own.
But I love that. I love that. So I I one of the things in building these panels, I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I scare people because I've had some people that were on panels that were like, I don't even have a job right now. Like I'm in between things. I'm pivoting from one area to another. And it's like, it's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the journey. It's just we don't always know fully where we are and what is next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's great that some people have this very well defined, like, okay, I'm in a company that I understand how growth works in this company, but even understanding growth in a particular company doesn't mean that that's necessarily a path you're going to take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that's really nice, if you have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's been in a field for 20 or 30 years, you start to see really like how much variability there is in what growth means for a particular person. And it's really more about a personal journey, right? So at least it is to me. I don't know, maybe that's flowery in some people's minds, but to me, personal growth is more important than financial is obviously important. But yeah, so in terms of growth in education, I can speak for Raine, that there are so many opportunities from where she is to go in different areas. I think community college is really nice because you have the freedom to own your class in ways that you wouldn't necessarily in a K through 12. But you also don't have some of the constraints of a four-year institution and some of the other draws on your attention or your being taken away from teaching itself, which I think is some people are really drawn to those other things, but if you're really drawn to teaching, then community college is a really nice way to be a part of that. But even within education, right, then there's administrative positions, so there's always different, ways to do a job. And sometimes that evolution is naturally just from one job to another. And sometimes it's across different fields and in different ways. So yeah. Anyway, sorry. Okay, so I'll start with you, Raine. Do you feel accepted by your colleagues and and in your profession overall? And do you ever still feel imposter syndrome?
So over at Mesa we do these what is it called? Friday afternoon trainings, and I actually made a Friday afternoon trainings about overcoming imposter syndrome. And the funny part is I am my biggest critic. Sometimes I'm like, man, what the heck am I saying to these students? But I mean, I make a difference, and even in like the smallest ways, and I don't find out till later. And it's like, it's how I describe it is, I wish I could see myself in other people's eyes, because I don't personally see the growth all the time. I know it's there because, I mean, talking to myself 5 years ago, I'd be like, what are you doing? Right. Right. And so I experience imposter syndrome all the time. And do I feel accepted by my colleagues in my profession? I definitely say yes. It's over at the community college, it's like a breath of fresh air just being around the people that I work with. It's like sometimes sometimes I don't even feel like I'm working. It just feels like I'm kind of hanging out, and it's nice, right? It's somewhere I would like to be, like on a regular day basis, given the hours, right? And at my at my startup company, funny enough, for a good minute, I was like, "Am I just not a shoe-in? What is it? Am I just like the diversity quota here?" That's what I was feeling like for a good minute. I'm like, "Is that what I'm doing here?" Because I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. But that's a lie. Since I started teaching these classes and whatnot with like the students, I really love like talking to them, and I really love like going through curriculum and whatnot and just going through the class and interacting with them. It's really nice. Like I could be having like, I don't know how to describe it. I could be having like a moment where I'm just like really like dumping on myself, right? But as soon as I like start interacting with them and we go through the class and whatnot, I feel like so euphoric afterwards. Like I'm not a runner, but I could do a couple like laps, and I don't know how to describe that feeling, but yeah.
I think you hit it on the money. I think you did it beautifully.
Perfect.
So thank you, Raine. Lindsay, did you want to follow up on that?
I don't know why I keep forgetting where the mute button is. So it was, do I have imposter syndrome? Oh, and I do feel valued? Yes. Do I still have imposter syndrome? Yes. I kind of just feel like it's not going to go away, to be honest with you. And it's gotten to a point now where I'm just like, it's there, but I just try to just ignore it, right? And believe me, there are times like especially at the beginning, oh my God, when I came back from maternity leave, because I had my second kid, and I'm on a call with a bunch of very intimidating people. And I caught I said some dumb stuff. like my brain just and that did not help, like my imposter syndrome, but that was okay, right? Like that doesn't mean like I've definitely since come back from that. Like almost people didn't really honestly even notice. I'm my worst critic. I still I'll like wake up in the middle of the night and cringe, but that's never gonna, I think that's pretty normal, right? If you have my brain type. But so yeah, what I would say that the longer that I've been in my role and the more successes that I've had in my role, it's been very affirming, and it's been a huge confidence builder. So I'm actually very happy with where I am in my job, and I still have imposter syndrome. And like I said, I just feel like that's might never go away, and I just really need to ignore it. I mean, if you guys have like tricks and tips, let me know. But
I have therapy dive. I love it.
But yeah, I just feel like it's just one of those. But at the same time too, it's like I kind of use it as like I'm gonna prove myself wrong, right? Or you know what I'm saying? Like I use it as a motivational tool to like go above and beyond, if that makes sense. So
It totally does. I love that. Awesome. Thank you. Elizabeth?
I have to agree. I also feel valued in my job. It was also important to me when I first graduated. It's kind of like a joke sometimes when you're really new in your role that like your coworker, like your coworker bestie is going to be like some 6-year-old person. And you know what? I love that, but I think I was just really lucky in my roles that everybody was also in their early 20s. So no one could really have a leg up on each other because we all really had no idea what we're doing. But moving to Illumina and having the exposure to biotech as a business, and that the business and money really comes first, and there's real deadlines that need to be met. Um, yeah, the imposter syndrome will always be there. I think something that has really calmed me down and made me reflect is having more intentional conversations with management. And sometimes it'll slip out that they also have normal lives and they have normal um, circumstances in their life that make me think like, oh, you also go home and like want to binge watch your TV series and pick up your kids, and you also have responsibilities that I could also have. Um, and bringing that humanness level to people in my job that are usually scary really brings it down a notch.
I think that's a great point, Elizabeth, is just talking to people, even if you're intimidated, allowing them to humanize themselves. It helps out with the imposter syndrome. I have to say, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, the only people that have ever answered this question about imposter syndrome with a no are men. We're on a call with all women, so I can say that. We're on a call. We're on a whatever, you get it. But I swear this is a question that I feel like I've never been I'm not saying that all men. I'm just saying that I don't think that I've ever talked to a single woman that isn't like, that isn't like basically on the edge of retiring, that it, maybe in that case, then they're like, yeah, no, I definitely felt it for a long time, but after 30 or 40 years, you kind of get over it. But yeah, I feel like that's so deep in us, to, and feel free to correct me if you think I'm off base, but I think that that's something that just resonates. Just feeling like this isn't the space for me. And I think that the more women are in these spaces, the more conversations like this we have, the less stigma there is around that. So thank you all for engaging in that, because I think it's really, really helpful to hear that other people have those feelings. So, okay, this is So great. We're down to the last question. So for students who are just starting their degree, are there any recommendations, tools, things that you would caution them about, or things that you are like, this is a thing you have to do? Anything like that? And I'll start with you, Elizabeth.
We touched on it earlier, but for me, I've been propelled in my career because of things that I tried and I didn't like them. And I wish I knew what I liked, but at least the things that I didn't like still pushed me in the right direction. And like I think about, I was in a plant lab for 2 years, and like while I was there, was not having a good time. But when I reflect on it, I can see now that really pushed me to where I am, even though it was painful in the moment. And so I wish I could tell myself back then of like truly lean into those experiences that are uncomfortable, because they will probably benefit you later.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. Raine?
Let's see. So anyone who's starting their degree, I don't want it to sound cliche, but don't be scared of, I would just having to try again. You're gonna hit moments where you're like, oh my God, I need to do this right now. And I need like this like done like perfectly the first time, but that's not the case all the time, right? It's completely okay to just be like, you know what, I'm not okay with this right now, and just do it over. Or if you have to retake a class, right? I retook several of my math classes because I was like, in that moment, I was like, I'm not giving it the best that I could right now. And so I'm just gonna drop this class and I'll do it again. And I felt so much better doing it the second time. Also, don't be afraid about like having necessarily, I would say, like a timeline. Like I understand like a financial aid, because I was also like in that, like I need to finish within this time because financial aid, right? But what I mean is, when I was at community college, I was like, I need to finish in 2 years and then transfer, right? Well, I changed my degree so many times because so many times because I was like, this didn't interest me, this didn't interest me. And then I went back to a degree that I initially had, but then someone talked me out of it, right? And it took me 4 years to finish my time at community college. And then I transferred and then changed my degree again, right? When I was at UCSD. But it felt, how should I say, like very empowering to be able to make those decisions for myself versus having someone tell me, hey, you need to do this, right? And it's like, no, I'm doing this for me. The person who is walking this journey is myself. So I need to do what makes me happy and what's going to essentially fulfill my little cup of joy at the end of the day, right? Because if I don't want to wake up, I don't know, like 10 years later, and I'm like, what the heck? I don't want to be here right now. I wanted to do something else, right? But I mean, if that happens, you have that, you can make that decision for yourself. But yeah, essentially nothing's essentially too permanent, right? You can keep changing, and don't be afraid of that change. Just kind of lean into it, as hard as that may be, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway in terms of a degree, especially for community college students. I mean, it's true for everyone, but as people who are often working multiple jobs while going to school, sometimes full time. Some of them may have kids that they're taking care of, or family members that they're caring for, or have illnesses or learning disabilities, or other things that just make that path longer. That's okay. Especially if your family doesn't really understand education and they think 4 years, that's how long this takes. And in some cases, if they're footing the bill, they may have an expectation that you're going to finish in that time period. And so yeah, it's important to be true to the journey that fits you. And that may be retaking classes, right? Yeah, I love to tell my students that I took algebra 5 times over the course of my life before I finally was like, okay, I want to do science. And they were like, 3 years you have to take of all math classes. And then I cried for a while, and then I got up and I did it. But yeah, so, there's there's not always a direct path, and that's okay too. So yeah, awesome. Thank you, Raine. Lindsay,
Yeah, so actually, I just want to echo everything that Raine said, because that just completely resonates with me and actually accurately describes like my path into STEM in general. So I guess, yeah, the biggest thing is plans are good, right? Plans are good. It's nice to have plans, but don't be so dead set on those plans where you're, so I'm from Kentucky, right? So I always use these like the blinders that racehorses wear, right? As like an example, where they're just like, because they can't, things will freak them out if they're in their peripheral. They have to be wearing these, right? To keep them focused on, the finish line, right? And that's good. But if you keep those blinders on too much, right, you miss all of the things that are happening all around you. And I feel like it's those little things that can guide you, right? If that makes sense. So, yeah, be open to change and like listen to like your gut and be okay with taking things slow and starting over and being uncomfortable, and don't compare yourself to other students. Like don't, because there's always going to be somebody who's smarter probably, right? Like, so just there's no point. And the smartest person in the class, they're not always going to be the smartest person, right? So it's just, to me, it's just stay true to yourself and listen to all those little things that happen along your way, right? Along your path. And if you need to take a right or a left or jump off the path for a second, that's okay, because you'll find your way back for sure.
or you find a better path.
Or you find a better, yeah, you find whatever your path is, right? Like,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, and that's another thing too that I think is worth mentioning, that even you may think that that person is the smarter person, but oftentimes the person that you see as being smarter is just more well equipped. And the equipment that they have is not necessarily attributed to them all the time, right? Some of it. Yes, thank you, Raine. Sorry. All right, take care. You're right. I should wrap it up. I could keep going. To respect everybody's time. So anyways, thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I know this means the world to our students, that they have this experience to build on their own careers. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, and thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Raine, in her absence. I'll accept the thanks for her. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, have a wonderful, wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.